Hello and welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem. Noam Dworman, unfortunately, he's not able to make it today. He had a last minute meeting, but we have a very special guest, someone who's I'm a very big fan of his work and all the good he does in the world. And he's a returning guest after maybe 6, 7 years. I'm not sure. Dr.
Yep.
Basil Termanini. He is the vice president of Syrian American Medical Society, SAMS. Welcome back.
Thank you, Hatem. I'm not the vice president anymore. It's been so long. I'm just a member of the foundation board and also the chairman of Turkey committee, which we send all the medical relief through Turkey into Syria in general.
Oh wow. So yeah, that this is how I actually first heard about you years ago. It's like all the work that you do, especially with the refugees, especially in the camps, especially with all these, you know, uh, all the failure of humans that happens all around the world. But your great work is always appreciated, and I hope you know that there's so many people are fans of yours.
Thank you. Really appreciate your support. The support of the American people has been great. They're very generous. We also get support from the U.S. government, from UN, and like other European countries.
And in a little bit also will join us political advisor Bassam Rifai. He'll be here. He's a regular guest. So let's talk about Syria. Everything in Syria. First of all, your reaction to the celebration of the fall of the dictator Al Assad after all these years.
It's unbelievable. We've been jubilated. It's a dream that came true after so much suffering and destruction. It's been ongoing for the last 54 years, but really very violent since the revolution started in 2011. It was the Syrian people have suffered so much. 1 million people killed. It was like 5% of the population. 12 million were displaced, both internally and externally. So much disabilities, so much psychiatric and physical disabilities. And all that is gone. People forgot all that and are celebrating in the streets. All the Syrians I know are, eager to start from scratch rebuilding the country. So yeah, it's really been celebrations, non-stop celebrations since Sunday.
Were you like surprised how fast the regime fell? Like it took maybe hours from, to go into Damascus and all that. Were you surprised at all?
Very surprised. We thought initially when this started, I think this started on Thanksgiving Day. We thought it was a limited operation, was nonsense. They're going to provoke the regime and Russia to retaliate and cause more destruction and suffering. But, what happened? The regime forces collapsed all of a sudden, and they were able to reach Aleppo within a day and they went into Aleppo, still no resistance. Everybody was in shock. So we're really elated that this happened. And the rebels, they were, acting very reasonably. They were like in one voice, and they really had reached out to the local population, especially the minorities, the Christians and the Syrians. Everybody was very happy and surprised how, they're respectable they were to the population. And this advancement continues south, and they conquered Hama within 24, 48 hours. The next city was Homs, the third city in Syria, still no significant resistance. And from there on, the whole regime collapsed. And Russia did a little bit of support, but wasn't meaningful. And as you know, Hezbollah is gone. He's like the Israeli took care of that problem, which was a major problem for the Syrian people because they usually intervene and they're very vicious and very violent. So they never came, which was luckily. And the Russians, as I said, they're also distracted in Ukraine. So this was really very timely, but as you said, very unexpected. I don't think even the rebels expected to go all the way to Damascus.
Yeah. So if we talk about, the general public, just to an idea so everybody can understand, what do you think really happened? Was it or the direct reason? I mean, it's almost the perfect storm, but is it like because Russia is very weakened, or Israel weakened Hezbollah, like you said, or Iran is very weakened, or what do you think of the reason
It's
of Turkish? Yeah,
it's really all the above,
yeah,
because in as if you look at the Syrian conflict or the Syrian revolution, the rebels had the upper hand between 2012 and 2015. Then Iran came to rescue. Hezbollah sent Hezbollah, and then they had the Shiite militias coming from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from Iran, and they tilted the balance towards the regime. But again, the rebels continued to advance. Then Russia intervened in 2015, and that really created so much violence. There was tens of thousands of barrel bombs, those cheap TNT missiles alternative that can cause lots of destruction. And they leased many of those, tens of thousands. The Russians have a very vicious, air force that they also did the damage lots of the major cities in Aleppo, Homs, Damascus. And then there was the besiegement. So once those elements were taken out of the pictures, Hezbollah was weakened by Israel, Iran the same, Russia is distracted. That tilted the balance, but was never tested after COVID. So there were no really direct confrontation between rebels and the government forces since 2019. And this was the only real confrontation, and I think they were testing the waters. But at the same time, they seemed to be very well prepared, the rebels, and they did lots of things in a secrecy, and there was very confidential preparation. Now, the new element that happened are the drones. They never used drones before, the rebels, and now looks like they're really very experienced. All of a sudden, they're experienced in using those, targeting the regime, like the tanks, the regime personnel. So this also created lots of panic among the regime forces. And this pace, the pace of advancement was really shocking to everybody.
and I think also like when I always learn that when you have nothing to fight for or to stand for, people are not going to fight for you. So I think a lot of the Syrian army,
Yeah,
just didn't want to fight anymore for Assad or any of these guys.
exactly. I think that's the morale was very, very low, and they've never been tested. I think the real fighters were Hezbollah and the Iranian militias, and previously. What the regime military is known for is looting and stealing, and that's what they do. That's what expertise in. Very few of the units are prepared to fight. This is basically the Republican fourth, I don't know what we call it, Farah Rabah, basically.
Mm.
It's the Republican army, which is run by Bashar Assad brother, Maher Assad. That's the only unit that's really prepared to fight. And they were not close to the front lines when this happened.
Oh, okay. So if we saw a similar like situations that happened in the Middle East where a dictator fell. But
Hmm.
then, we get this, oh my God, it's great. And then things turn to be worse, if not the same as when the dictator was there. Like we saw Gaddafi, we saw Saddam Hussein, we saw this, that, do you have any fear of that? Or what's your reaction to that?
There's certainly some anxiety, some fear based on other, countries' experiences, as you mentioned. But I think the situation here is a little bit different, since the situation in Syria right now is really rock bottom. People are extremely poor, and they get paid nothing, peanuts. They get paid like $10 a day, a month, $20 a month for the whole family. They're all suffering. They're all below poverty level. There's so much corruption. There are no minimal services. Electricity maybe 1 hour if you're lucky per day, and everything is really not available, and the prices are equal to the prices in Turkey and neighboring countries, which have much better standard of living. So I think everybody really reached the bottom, the rock bottom, and from there it should improve. And then we're encouraged with HTS or the rebels' first reaction and interaction with the big cities in Aleppo and in Damascus. They reached out to the Christians, and the Christians were extremely happy. I talked to our friends there. I have a classmate who's very well-known doctor. He was really extremely happy. They were very anxious from the regime propaganda about all those rebels going to come, they're going to kill you, they're going to kick you out, they're not going to let you go to churches, they're going to make all your girls put the veil on and so forth. Nothing of that happened. They were really very open hand, and they reached out to all those minorities. And I think the services are way better than they were a week ago with the regime. Now they have electricity, they have running water, they have bread available. They distributed so much free bread to everybody to help them out. They're cleaning the streets. The streets have not been cleaned for months and years. So I think everybody is now, they see the difference, and that's a good sign. But I think that what's more important is the governance, that who's going to be in charge, ministers, who's going to be in the governor. And what they done so far, they had transitioned to the Salvation Government, which is run by HTS in Idlib. So they were assigned for the government, transitional government, for the next 3 months. That's, to me, is not a great sign, but it might be based off necessity, because there's nothing else available right now to run the country. I think the next government should be a coalition of all technocrats, mostly. They have some technocrats, but they are very leaning towards religious. That's what they have right now. But looks like the message coming out from the Salvation Government and from the rebels, the HTS, is quite different than the message was coming out a year ago, even 3 months ago in Idlib city. The message right there was not very extremist, but very conservative. I give you an example.
We lost Dr. Basel. I'm sure he'll be back in a few seconds, but there he is. Yeah.
Sorry, I got disconnected. Sorry about
no
that.
problem. And Bassam is here at the same time. Look at that.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I was saying that what happened in the past, they would go into some of our hospitals. We do have quite a few, like 15 hospitals in northwestern Syria, and we treat like 3.5 million people every year. So they would go and say, oh, why do you have men and women working together in the same room? Why the women are not dressed, very conservatively? And we don't really allow them to do that, but they'll try to intervene. But now, when they go into Aleppo city and Damascus, all those Western-looking girls are next to them, and they don't force them to dress differently. And the message coming out, as I said, is completely different than it was a few months ago. It looks like they have different PR now. They're reaching out, and they're trying to get recognition by the Western governments. They're trying to stay away from that extremist, conservative kind of definition.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed also that they didn't, usually they will just fire everybody in the government and take over. They haven't. They told everybody to stay put like you are.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it, like you said, maybe they didn't expect to move on that quick.
Yes.
But they did. Can you tell us a little bit about the Syrian community? Like, what's the percentage of Christian, Shia, Jewish, Sunni,
Well, I think the Jewish community, unfortunately, is very, very limited. Used to be more robust, but I think they were immigrated or forced out over the years because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And initially, they were forced out by some of the Jewish gangs. They wanted them to migrate to Palestine, but many of them ended up in the US. You know, there's a big Syrian community in New York City. You probably know them, and they're all Jewish Syrians, and they have the same culture and cuisine that we all eat in Syria, and they listen to the Syrian music, Arabic music. But the Christians, I think they're depending on the city. Some cities like Aleppo, they have very high proportion. Maybe I would say it used to be 25, 30% between Christians, Armenians, Syrians. There are lots of Kurds also in both big cities. In Damascus, it's less than that, maybe around 5, 10%, and the same thing in Homs. There's Alawite, but they mostly live on the coast, Latakia, Tartus, and some around Homs. But in general, it's been like people lived together very peacefully until the Assad regime came and favored the Alawites in his army, favored them in all government positions, and gave them so much privileges. So and assigned them in the security services to torture others. That security apparatus is huge, and they had very bad reputation. So that's what happened. There was lots of friction between Alawites and the rest of the population.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the videos and pictures from the jail, that horrible jail. I mean, I don't recommend anybody to watch it. It's just like you cannot sleep for days from the things that you see. I cannot believe that human beings are capable of doing stuff like that. It's unbelievable.
Yes,
I think
and that's
Bassam is
not.
joining us as well. I see him here, but I don't see his oh, there he is.
Hey,
Welcome,
Hatem.
Bassam, to the show. I introduced you earlier. Um, I have a Syrian connection right here.
Yeah.
So let's get your political reaction to what's going on in Syria first, and then we'll continue the discussion.
So, thank you for having me, first off. And as the good doctor was saying, I think Syrians around the world have been very excited and elated, and feeling the joy of what's to come. Um, we acknowledge the uncertainty. We understand there are going to be difficult times to come, but we also acknowledge that as a Syrian community, we are very resilient people, and as the doctor just said, Syrians have never really had animosities towards each other in varying sects or religious backgrounds or anything like that. Syrians have historically worked together until the Assad regime created that divisiveness. So I'm feeling very confident that what's to come is going to be a lot of unity in the country, as we're seeing. We just mentioned about the Alawis in the coastal regions, and that's been a stronghold of the Assad regime. But we're seeing in the streets that there are people coming out and supporting the downfall of the Assad regime, that they are supporting the opposition. They are carrying the opposition's flag. There are people celebrating what's going on. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of positivity come out of Syria, but the country as a whole is going to need a lot of regional support. So, for example, the current bombardment of what's going on from Israel into Syria is certainly concerning. I don't think that a military effort is what's needed right now in Syria. I think that regional support and diplomacy are the things that Syria need right now. They need that. They need support from the United Nations. They need the reopening of funds from the United Nations to allow for humanitarian support into Damascus and into all the other major cities of Syria. I think that's what's really needed is that support for the country. Beyond that, I think what's really key is that we focus and we watch what's going to happen with transitional governments going on in Syria.
Let me ask you this. I
Um,
just asked the doctor the same
Go ahead.
question. Is like you've seen, as from a political point of view, you've seen the same scenario happen in a lot of Arab countries like Libya, like Iraq, where the dictator falls down, and then there's a brief joy, and then things just turn to be either same or worse. Are you worried about that at all?
So of course, I think everybody is also going to be worried about that. It's not like that's a reality that can't happen in Syria. Of course, that is a reality that can happen in Syria. But what we need to work towards is to try to give them the support, pardon me, is to give them the support that's needed so that that reality doesn't occur. Uh, and part of that is to I don't know if you guys have touched on it, but seeing what's been actually going on the in the government now in Syria, and that people who held positions of power weren't necessarily just expelled out of government.
Yeah.
They've been told, hey, we want you to be included in
Yeah, this
in
is one of the
in
things
in the
I just
future of
mentioned.
Syria.
That is, yeah, it's strange. Usually in movement like this, they will like arrest everybody, put them in jail, but they haven't. They put everybody. It's like, hey, let's work together and see that. So let me ask you this,
That's
both.
and that's the big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I think part of it is like they didn't expect that the regime will fall that quick. Um, Dr. Termanini, why? What do you think of the, Assad fled to Russia, not Iran, not anywhere else. I mean, a question for both of it, but it's very interesting to me. I mean, Iran obviously have a lot of holes now with we saw, all the assassination stuff, but Russia, I mean, we don't even nobody even know when did he fled. But what do you think of him there? Is he gonna cause any threats being still there and alive or not arrested, or you think he should be arrested and brought to justice by the international community?
Yeah, I think the reason he opted to Moscow is because of two reasons: lifestyle. Iran is not his lifestyle or his wife's lifestyle, and maybe feeling a little bit more secure there with the nuclear weapons. He's a coward. He's not a fighter, and he thinks this is safer for him. But yeah, there's gonna be lots of investigation. There's so much atrocities. This is way beyond the regular crimes. 1 million people slaughtered. Those you saw the detention center in Syria, and this is actually way better than other detention centers. There are 15 different security apparatuses in Syria, and they all compete to see which one is more brutal. And people go in and get tortured constantly, and including some of our colleagues. There's a doctor who worked for SAMS. It's a U.S. trained doctor, Dr. Kamil Maz, who used to work in Lebanon on a psychosocial program, mental health project. And I think, my understanding, his mom got sick in Damascus. So he got the permit, or he thought he's not wanted. He just went there and disappeared. This was 2018. And he has, wife and kids here in the U.S. and Texas. He's the American citizen. So such a sweet guy. Nobody knew anything about him. His wife, his family had lots of high hopes for him, but then State Department told them that they have good, strong evidence that he is dead. So this is the kind of treatment that, it's all mostly well-educated people, that there's so many lawyers, there's so many engineers, doctors. They just, because of opinion, because they don't really care about fighters. Fighters get treated better than those intellectuals, and they torture them constantly. And actually, they used an expert from the Nazis, who was used to live in Argentina as a fugitive. Hafiz Assad, father of Bashar, brought him for his experience in torturing people and destroying them. and they traditionally they always had tens of thousands of detainees. Many of them will just, there are so many pictures of those victims. It's called Caesars. There's a big file of 40,000 pictures documented of people emaciated. They have torture marks all over them, missing eyes, and they have numbers on their foreheads with the branch number of the intelligence service plus their serial number, just like the Nazis. And so this has been going on. What you saw was the regular prison, even though it's so horrible, but they are worse than that. So there's going to be a international criminal court. Again, there's no question about that. So many countries, so much evidence collected against them. I don't think he's going to escape justice, but I don't think he's ever going to try to go back to Syria. Nobody will support him. I can tell you that. This is a dark era in Syria history that is all behind us. Now we're going to be reconciliation. We're going to be rebuilding Syria on a healthy and strong foundation. That's what we started doing already in the health sector. Now we have, hospitals, and we're delivering emergency supplies to all big cities, to Aleppo, Homs, Hama, Damascus, and we all now starting working on Deir ez-Zor, which was just, the SDF forces got out of it, but they stole all the equipment, all the ventilators, the incubators, they're all gone in that city. Some of the doctors just called us and asked him for some help. Imagine somebody stealing all those equipment and depriving the locals from any of those supplies all of a sudden, overnight.
By the way, if somebody listening right now and want to help, I usually do it at the end of the show, but since we're talking about this, where they can go?
SAMS, SAMS USA.net. This is our web, SAMS-USA.net. Yes, please help us. There's a huge need for everything, emergency supplies. We are sending volunteers there, and we'll collaborate with the local health directory, with the health ministry of Syria. It's the Free Syria now. They all changed the color of the flag, but they all, helping us. There was so much needs before this war, during the war, and when the rebels took over. Very limited, but our hospitals in northwestern Syria way better supplied than what they have right now in the government-controlled area. Used to be by government-controlled areas. So yeah, we are starting the reconciliation. We're talking to all the doctors everywhere, and looks like everybody turned around. What they used to be strong supporters of Assad, now they're holding the revolution flag, and now they're talking to us, and they want to help out. I think there's a great attitude by everybody.
Yeah. From what they see, also all the pictures, all the things coming up, of course it's gonna be, people like any human will react that way. But Sam, let's talk about conspiracy theory a little bit. Do you think that there is a deal? Because this is one of the things that been, some of the media in the Middle East are talking, some kind of deal to let Assad go. Peacefully without arresting him or anything, or not, or there's some kind of deal in the region in general to get where we are by the let Assad go to Russia and peacefully and take whatever he wants with him, and then you start your own thing. Do you think that's there's any fact or truth to that?
So Hatem, I want to touch on a few things. One is what Dr. Termanini had said, absolutely correct. I think a big focus needs to be on Sedonaya right now. My own father was in that prison, and I know that it was a brutal place. We all know that it was a brutal place. And additionally, he mentioned about supporting SAMS. I personally support SAMS, and I think that everybody should. And it's certainly a great place to support. Additionally, if you want to support advocacy efforts, I would support the American Coalition for Free Syria. But the idea also of Assad living anywhere else besides Russia, I think like Dr. Termanini said, it's, that he probably enjoys the lifestyle there better than anywhere else, and that's why they opted to go there. And on the conspiracy theory side, listen, he didn't get there on his own. Um, you know, for sure there were deals that were made, and um, back channel deals that allowed him and his family to get to Russia, um, and to for him to finally step down suddenly. Um, but I think he stepped down, knowing that the writing was on the wall. He in the days prior to that reached out, right, to Israel, reached out to the United States, reached out to other international factors, and said, I will do this if you do this, in order to try to maintain his stronghold. But knowing that he didn't get any responses, he knew that his time was limited, and obviously created his deals to get out of Syria. So
because it's
it's
politics,
not
it's always,
surprising to me.
there's always deals. But you know what? I cannot wait for hopefully the war to stop everywhere, but some kind of like agreement to stop the Russian-Ukrainian war. Obviously, we want the Palestinian Israel to stop also as well, but I'm talking about specifically that to do some kind of deal, and that deal include giving up Assad, because he needs to
Yeah,
go to jail exactly where he put all these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I would very strongly agree with you, and I would really hope that would be something that would be included in something that came down to the Russian-Ukrainian war. I think that one day we'll finally see him come to justice. I can't imagine that Russia probably wanted to accept him, because they know that having him there in the long run is going to be a card in
A card,
their
yeah.
hand.
That's what I think too. I think it's smart from the Russian to do that, and I think
Yeah.
it's a card in the negotiation. And one day, but I think that we should start, or you should start, since you're in the political thing, is putting that demand out there as part of any deal that's made to have Assad back in jail where he belongs. Let's talk about something important now. The new government, the new leader, or the new leader, and the connection to Al Qaeda, you know, and all the history and stuff like that. Where do you see that playing around? Like, because you already see that, he was, there's a long history. Maybe you will say it better, but he was part of ISIS in the beginning, and then he split from al-Zarqawi, went to Syria, and leaned more toward al-Qaeda. Didn't want to follow the ISIS thing. I don't know really the difference between them, but where do you see that, and how is that gonna help the Syrian cause? Because now everybody wants to support Syria. Everyone wanna, Biden said he's gonna give a lot of money, all this, but there is gonna be that sphere of you're also supporting Al Qaeda somehow. So how do you play that?
Sure. So, okay, so it was unfortunate that HTS was the leader in charge of these military movements. Um, that being said, Jolani is pragmatic, and we've already seen that he's been inclusive. And that being said, if you go back to the inception of HTS, there was a concerted effort to try to garner support outside of Al Qaeda. And when that support wasn't met internationally, they turned to Al Qaeda because they needed support, right? So they 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 only went with that option because they were forced to go that route. That's why I think it's really important that now we make sure that that Syrian transitional governments and a political movement have regional support and international support, that we monitor what's going on, that we allow for free and fair elections in Syria, to elect a free and democratic government, that we allow the people to have freedom of movement, freedom of speech, that these things that were never available to Syrians are going to be available for them now. That's what's important, not necessarily what might have happened in the past or where they might stand. Let's focus on making sure that Syria is an ally and not going to turn to uh, to outside actors.
Dr. Termanini, what do you think? Should he step down and not be the face of the new change, or it doesn't matter?
He said he will. That's what he said. I think there, as Mr. Rifai said, he certainly is very pragmatic, and he proved that in the change in messaging. You know, there was, as I told you, there was 180-degree turnaround from before this campaign to like the last couple of weeks. Everybody was surprised, very pleasantly surprised. And I think there is some Western influence forcing him to do that. I think he was probably had to give some guarantees that he's not gonna harm the minorities in the big cities, in Aleppo and Damascus and Homs, before he was given the green light. That's just a theory, obviously. One of your conspiracy theories, that there's some collaboration, but certainly he cannot. He can. I know the government. As SAMs, we don't deal with the Salvation Government (HTS) because we're not allowed to by the American law. They are designated as terrorists. So we don't have any direct communication with them. We deal with the independent health directorates. There's one in Idlib, there's one in Hama, in Aleppo, and now we're dealing with the old health directorates and the health ministry, and those are all our colleagues. You know, we know them very well from medical, like classmates from medical school and so forth. So there is definite change, and the messaging now coming out of the Salvation Government is very encouraging. And as I told you, I was talking to many of our friends in Aleppo, the Christians and the Kurds. They are extremely happy. They are elated more than the other population because they had so much fear and anxiety about the change. Now, all that thing now, I think there was also a rumor that the Aleppo governor will be assigned to a Christian priest. That was a very strong, rumor. I don't know. I think I was told that the church did not want him to be, but the priest was willing to act as a governor of Aleppo. So this is the kind of pragmatism that you're seeing with this message, and it's going to help definitely with reconciliation and restructuring, because we need the Western government to act through the government, the official, legitimate, Syrian government, to send all the aid and help, and through the other NGOs that we're respecting, that we dealt with, like SAMS. There are so many other medical and humanitarian relief organizations that have been delivering help to northwestern Syria for years. And we are very transparent. We are very efficient. Our overhead is only like 6%. So I think it's similar to other, and Syrian/hybrid NGO that started in, US or started in Europe, now delivering aid to Syria. So we can expand on our experiment by adding other cities and governments.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. One is the humanitarian part, obviously, where the Syrian people have been suffering for years and years. I have a friend of mine, actually, he all his life saving, he's Syrian, and he bought a building in Syria right before, when ISIS took over, and they just took it from him. Just like that.
Yeah.
Everything that he ever worked
That
on.
happened to me as well.
Yeah.
Myself and my family, they took our homes away from us.
Yeah.
That wasn't uncommon to happen in Syria. My mother, that she had an elementary school, they took it away from her.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
That's
So I think there's one part is the humanitarian part, and helping the Syria, and there's the political part. You
Right.
need partnership, you need support, and
Yeah.
it's very important, especially like that. Like we said, the Salvation Group is like it's under a category of terrorist organization, and the leader
Yeah.
was connected to Al-Qaeda. So is there any names that you have in mind, maybe here, maybe there, that you would think that they should be the face of the Syrian people right now? Or is there any names that could lead that, or that you have in mind?
Well,
I think
quite a few.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Dr. Termanini.
Yeah, there's so many good people that over the years that are well trusted, and there's like a coalition. There are other, there are some local people that Syrian people trust. But I think they need that opportunity to take over, or the Salvation Government or HTS should allow them to be included in a more coalition government. What they have right now is the same Salvation Government that they had in Idlib, which doesn't fit the transition. You need some more inclusive and more technocrat, different minorities and different backgrounds. So I think I'm hoping this will happen after March, because this assignment was only until March, I was told. So hopefully we'll have more. And in the meantime, I think many activists here in the Western Europe, they're acting on politically to change the designation of HTS based on their behavior and based on the current message and outreach. And people are pleased with that. I think there's a good chance this will happen. But until it happened, we cannot deal with them, and other NGOs and other government will be reluctant to deal directly with the Salvation Government.
And that's the point, is like the people that would suffer are the Syrian people again. That's why they shouldn't be there anymore, Bassam, what do you think?
Well, that's why, as Dr. Termanini said, I'm hoping that after March or so, we'll see some really good people emerge. I think right now what has to happen is really just a stabilization. Just try to bring a return to normalcy of your basic civic sort of operations. The basic things like garbage collections, things like that. Try to bring people to a sense of normalcy and a sense of stability, right? Bring that about, and then maybe allow for, as the doctor said, there are a lot of really good candidates. There are a lot of really good leaders in the Syrian community, and these are people who have been around for many, many years. Let's have them come forward, and let's let the Syrian people decide on this in a free and fair election, and let's see a democratic process go through the way that it's supposed to in Syria.
What do you think the right governing system that should work in Syria, in your opinion?
Well, I think that.
Go ahead, Bassam.
Go ahead, Dr. Termanini.
Yeah, I think that the current system is not bad, but it's not really what the current system on paper. It's okay.
Prime Minister.
That's right.
Yeah, the problem is the way that it's all dictatorship and corruption. So I think there's going to be some change. It's going to be presidential. The president is very strong, position, and then you have a prime minister chosen by the president and voted on by the Congress. That's going to probably continue the same, but it's just the problem is that everything was done outside the Constitution. Outside, there was no accountability. There's so much corruption, and there was so much violation of the law, and that should stop. I think that's what I can tell you from our experience in Idlib, that there's no corruption. I mean, I can tell you because I go there frequently. I visit our hospitals. It's like 10 years ahead of what the government-controlled areas from. Nobody violates the law. They know exactly they have to pay fines for that. There's no corruption. There's a free economy. You can do whatever you want. You need a permit. There's you pay taxes, reasonable taxes, 3-4%. It's just, and the infrastructure is so good. There's electricity 24/7, internet, fast internet available. It's really completely different country. It's be similar, comparable to Turkey, even though it's a war zone. So people are going to see the difference in government-controlled area very soon. They're going to have, as much fuel as they want to, if they want to have the money to buy it. The only problem now are the salaries. There's a huge difference between the salaries in Idlib, where the salaries are comparable to Turkey, and the salaries under government control, ex-government control, where they are frozen to very, very low. That will not be adequate for living. And I think the government, Salvation government, promised the employees that are going to have increases in salary gradually to match what they have in Idlib city. So it's going to take some time to get to that level. But I'm based on what I witnessed in Idlib, there's a great hope for people in the rest of the country.
Hatem, like Dr. Termanini said, that the current infrastructure is actually good. The current setup is sound. The problem, as he said, was just that the constitution was never followed. When Bashar al-Assad became the president in Syria, they, suddenly the night before changed the constitution because his age, did not meet the limit. They changed the constitution to suit them. It operated as a dictatorship. That's not how it should operate. It should operate as it's supposed to under the constitution. So if there's accountability, that's what's needed in Syria. It's not necessarily a change of the infrastructure.
I think, Syria is going to face a lot of challenges in the near future, but I think they're capable of doing it because they see the bright future. When you see the future, I think two of the major challenges beside everything, one we talked about already, is the connection of the leader to, Al-Qaeda. I think the other thing is Israel right now is being accused of land grab and destroying, a lot of the Syrian military for no reason. How do you see that? Let's go with Bassam first.
Sure. So that's the point that I had touched on before that is really troublesome. We're really concerned about the Israeli airstrikes on military bases and buildings throughout Syria. It's a violation of sovereignty. Well. Yeah, and it's a violation of sovereignty, and it shouldn't be accepted. Additionally, the path forward isn't necessarily through the military, through military action by Israel, but it should be through regional negotiations and through diplomacy and regional support. So these land grabs are certainly concerning, and I would implore the international community to put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to stop these actions.
More pressure? It's not working. But do you think it's justified? Like, if you were like political Israel, a part of the Israeli government, would you be like, okay, well, first there's somebody's taking over that's connected to Al-Qaeda. We don't know what's gonna happen. We need to protect ourselves. Let's do this. Is that justified in anything at all, in your opinion?
So sure, I can understand that fear from the basic idea of it, but let's look at it from a larger perspective. If you as Israel are pushing in and trying to make land grabs and continuing to bomb these buildings, won't then the Syrians as a whole want to revolt against that? That's what they did against the Assad regime, right? So rather than using military action, why don't we choose diplomacy? Why don't we try to create an ally rather than an enemy? That's what I think, if Israel really wanted to have security, would be doing. And so I think that trying to use military action is the wrong step for them to take. It makes sense on your first instinct, but in the long run, it doesn't make good security sense for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, I was asking the question that people might ask, but I don't think it even makes sense in that term, because how strong, like they're not even an army, and they're far away. They already have the part of the Golan.
They're far away. That's right.
They secured. There's nothing. They don't have the capability. It's not Hezbollah. They don't have anything. There's no reason. I think it's just Benjamin Netanyahu and his greed. Dr. Termanini, what do you think of the Israeli grab?
I was very upset. I think instead of those unprovoked attacks on military targets and creating more enemies, they should have a welcoming hand to the new government, which is really truly represent the Syrian people rather than a dictatorship. And I think the only explanation I have for that is that they had full control of those arms, and tanks, and because they were run by Bashar al-Assad, which they had trusted him not to use against Israel. They allowed him to have those advanced weapons to use against his people, and that's what now they don't have him in control. They don't trust the people to follow him. But I think that's not, and I talked to a few Israelis who were really upset with the Netanyahu. He said, we have a stupid leader. Why did he do that? And some of those were supporters of the Syrian revolution. They're really true supporters of the free spirit. And now you have a coalition. It's going to have a coalition of all those, different. Some of those will be against Israel, but the majority will be neutral. All what they care about is to build their country. We're going to be 100% occupied by, fixing the damage that Bashar al-Assad and building a modern country, a modern economy. And now you're trying to attack us and create more enemies. This is the stupid thing I've seen. Netanyahu has done quite bad things, with Gaza. With Hezbollah, I don't think that's stupid. I think it was very smart, but that helped the Syrian cause. But with Gaza, he's done so many atrocities. But this thing here, politically, it's suicidal, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows his real vision. I mean, that's what I always said. That's what he wanted. And because especially times like this, right after revolution, people are looking for friends. Like whoever is going to help the Syrian people right now, it's going to always be remembered. Said this is the time for Israel to make friends with Syria and be like forever friendship. But
and that's why I say that diplomacy is the answer, not military action. Trying to weaken, if his idea is okay, I think that a bad actor is going to come into play into Syria, and they are not going to be our friends. They are going to be our enemies. And so I want to weaken them from now while I can. That still doesn't even make sense, because you're just creating more hatred towards Netanyahu and towards Israel. It just doesn't make sense on any level that you look at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last question. How involved is the Syrian American community in the transitioning in Syria right now? I know medically you've been involved for a long time and military, but how about, politically and to rebuild?
Everybody is very much involved now. I mean, we had maybe 50% of the Syrian community physicians involved with us, but now we're getting calls from everybody that they want to help. They want to go inside for medical missions. They want to contribute with their experience, contribute financially. There's so much excitement about this new era of reconciliation and rebuilding. And we have big plans. We're going to announce a $100 million future plan for the next 5 years, 2030 Syria Health, to rebuild the whole system. And we're going to be bridging the public sector, which is very poor shape. It's been terrible shape, the same as those detention center. We're going to rebuild that in collaboration with the private sector as well. So we are having lots of support from the local community, but we also need the support of the international community. As we need support from the U.S. government, from the UN, from the WHO to rebuild the health system that we all think that Syrians are capable of and deserving.
Hatem, to answer it from the political perspective, the Syrian American community have been very, very involved in a transition of what's to happen in Syria. But that being said, we absolutely welcome a discussion from all regional partners, from the international community, from the United States government. These are things that are all being welcomed right now, and the Syrian American community is a heavy drive for what's to come as far as politically in Syria.
What do you think of Trump being do you think he's going to be good for Syria? I mean, he said it's not the US war, so they're not going to be involved. But for rebuilding, do you think Trump or Biden would have been better at this moment?
I don't think that. Go ahead, doctor.
So I think it's difficult to tell. But I think some of the Trump influence was felt before this. I think that the Hezbollah, destruction and Iran pressure, and even the Russian. And I think this is all because of Trump. Everybody is looking forward for Trump and to see what the change in policy is. Pleasing Iran is over, and Iran is feeling the pressure. So I think that helped a lot. But in the future, I think Trump would like to policies stay away from helping out directly. But I think he's pragmatic also. I think if he's convinced this is the way to go, I think he's going to support tremendously. So I think it's good for the U.S. to be part of this era and have Syria as a friend for many years to come.
Bassam? I think it's difficult to answer whether Biden or Trump would have been better for the future of Syria after this week and the doubtful of Assad. But personally, I think that historically, the Trump and people who were involved in the Trump administration in the past had actually a better grasp on the situation in Syria, whereas the Biden administration, it was almost like they just wanted to wash their hands of it and almost like it didn't exist. So the Trump administration, I think, would probably be more likely to support, like Dr. Termanini said, maybe not in a direct manner, but more likely to support in a political way and to provide the resources maybe that are needed. But it's not up to the United States to choose for the Syrian people, and that's why I don't think the Trump administration will want to get directly involved. But I think that they will, in the long run, end up actually being better for Syria. Because like I said, the Biden administration, they just wanted to wash their hands of it. And regardless if it was Biden or Trump, though, I think it's important for the United States to be involved in one way or another, because Russia is still wanting to have their port in Tartus. They're still wanting to be involved. It's still a strategic point for them. And it's up to us to try to make sure that they are a limited role in Syria.
Okay. All right. So let's close out with this. If you can send a message first to the Syrian people and then to the American people. We'll start with Dr. Basel. But for me, I would say, for Syrian people, like, you are in a historic crossroad. Now it's time. Learn from the mistakes of every nation around you. Rebuild and be the democracy that we all want you to be. I think you gotta be smart about securing everything, because now everybody's gonna try to get involved, from Iran to Iraq to Turkey to Russia to the United States. Do your own thing. And I think, like I said, elect a democratic government, and I would like to see new names. For me personally, I'm not Syrian, but I'm saying, like, because I know how, if this group stays in power, is gonna slow down the thing. So I would love to see a transaction where, like, it's just the out, somebody else is new in, that somebody that's been working Syria. And I know so many talented Syrian people, and they're so warm, just enough that right now in the middle of all of this, there's no crime. Just that shows you what kind of people they are. So if you send 30-second message to Syrian people and 30 to the American people, Dr. Termanini, you start.
Yes, for the Syrian people, I think we want them to hold tight. I think the worst is over. We are very excited about the future. We're gonna, together between our colleagues in Syria and our doctors and nurses throughout the world, we're gonna build the best healthcare system, and we're gonna build it from scratch. Everybody is gonna receive a high quality healthcare We're going to support medical education as our own goal. You know, the medical education has deteriorated so much. So those are our goals. We're going to have talking about Sam's Medical City before this, and we're going to move it from Idlib to Aleppo and another one in Damascus. So we're going to work together. We're stretching our hand to everybody inside Syria, and we're going to help together build the healthcare system. For the U.S., I want everybody try to help out with this historic moment. You know, we need lots of resources. The healthcare system is in bad shape because of corruption and because of the war, and we need your help now more than ever. So please donate to us to sams-usa.net, other medical relief and other organizations delivering humanitarian aid to whole of Syria. We believe in whole of Syria concept. Thank you.
And just like we mentioned in the middle of the podcast before in this episode, that SAMS is certified by the government, so all the money is counted for, looked for, everything. Yeah. So it's safe and secure.
It's 501c3, so it's tax deductible. Absolutely.
There you go. Bassam?
For me, I would say to the Syrian people, first off, congratulations. This is something that we've been not just looking forward to for the last 14 years. This is something we've been looking forward to for over 50 years, dealing with the brutality of the Assad regime and seeing the Assad gone. This is an opportunity to create an inclusive government body that represents Syria's diverse population, that fosters their economic recovery, and allows for the return of refugees and IDPs, the internally displaced people, to come back to their homes. It gives us an opportunity to rebuild the country in a way that is inclusive for all. And as far as the United States goes, my message would be to support Syrians. Support us not just financially, but support Syrians in a way that makes Syrians feel like they're not going into this alone. That they have support from the United States, from regional partners around, from the international community. That they have our support. As Dr. Termanini said, please donate to SAMS. Please donate to ACS, to the Syrian American Council. Please support the efforts in Syria, and please, thank a Syrian or congratulate a Syrian, I should say, when you see them, because this is a momentous moment that we've all been looking forward to.
Well, thank you so much both for sharing this moment with us, and I cannot wait to see what Syria and Syrian will do and build a historic new republic. So congrats to both of you, and thank you so much for being here, and congratulations.
These are exciting times. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.